Have you ever seen a principal mock a student in front of the whole school, only to freeze in shock moments later? When Principal Whitmore sneered, "If you're so smart, then solve it," no one expected what happened next. How did a 13-year-old black scholarship student turn the tables at one of the most elite schools in the state? And why did some want to tear him down even after he proved himself again and again? Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The halls of Westbridge Academy gleamed with polished floors and spotless white walls, adorned with portraits of notable alumni, almost all of them white, many of them wealthy donors whose names graced the bronze plaques beneath each frame. It was the kind of school where excellence was expected, and privilege flowed as freely as the filtered water from the fountains in every wing. The students wore sharp uniforms with the school crest stitched neatly on their breast pockets, and the faculty, most of whom had degrees from Ivy League universities, carried themselves with a distinct air of superiority. 13-year-old Jamal Carter didn't quite fit the mold. Though his grades were impeccable, his teachers often overlooked him in class discussions. His questions were brushed aside, and his suggestions, no matter how insightful, met with polite dismissal. His mother, a single parent and local community college professor, had fought tooth and nail for Jamal to receive a scholarship to Westbridge. It was an opportunity they both valued deeply, even if the reception wasn't exactly warm. Jamal loved math. Numbers spoke to him in a way words sometimes didn't. Patterns, equations, logic, these things made sense. In math, there was no bias, no judgment. You were either correct or you weren't. It was the one subject where he felt truly confident, even when others doubted him. On a crisp autumn morning, Jamal walked into the school auditorium for the annual Math Challenge, a prestigious event where students from different grades competed in front of faculty and peers. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and nerves. Teachers in the front row adjusted their glasses and murmured among themselves. Parents filled the back rows. And on stage, Principal Meredith Whitmore stood poised in her sleek navy suit, a clipboard in hand. A tall, blonde woman of 43, she had built her reputation on upholding the school's elite standards. Jamal stood backstage, smoothing the sleeves of his navy blazer, feeling the familiar knot of tension in his stomach. Beside him, classmates whispered. "Why's he even here?" One sneered under his breath. "He's just a scholarship kid. He probably won't make it past the first round," another chuckled. Jamal heard it all but kept his gaze steady. He reminded himself, numbers don't lie. The competition began with a flurry of easy warm-up questions. Students buzzed in confidently. The audience applauded. Jamal answered correctly each time, though Principal Whitmore barely acknowledged his responses. Her eyes lingered on the other students, those whose parents sat in the donor boxes, those whose names she greeted in the hall with familiarity. As the rounds progressed, the questions grew harder. Contestants dropped out one by one until only a few remained. Jamal is among them. Principal Whitmore's smile grew tighter. "Next question," she announced, voice clear through the microphone. "Solve this problem on the board. If a train travels at a speed of 60 miles per hour for 1 hour, then increases its speed by 10% each subsequent hour, how far will it have traveled after 5 hours? Markers squeaked against the whiteboard as the remaining contestants scribbled furiously. Jamal's mind raced, not with panic, but with the joy of solving a challenge. He broke the problem down in his head: 60 miles in the first hour, then 66, 72.6, 79.86, and so on. He quickly calculated the cumulative distance. While others hesitated or erased their work in frustration, Jamal stepped forward confidently and presented his answer. Principal Whitmore glanced at it, barely concealing her skepticism. "We'll see if that's correct," she said curtly, turning to check with the adjudicators. It was correct. A murmur rippled through the audience. The final round approached, the hardest problems reserved for only the best students. Principal Whitmore paused and glanced pointedly at Jamal, then leaned into the microphone, her tone suddenly sharp. "Well," she said, eyes narrowing, "if you're so smart, then solve this." On the screen behind her appeared a notoriously difficult problem, one lifted from a recent university-level math competition. The kind of problem no middle schooler would be expected to solve. The room fell silent. Even the parents stopped their whispered conversations. Jamal stared at the screen. The equation was complex, dense with variables and nested functions. The tension in the room became palpable. Principal Whitmore folded her arms, clearly expecting failure. Jamal took a deep breath. The numbers swirled in his mind. He began to work it out methodically, piece by piece, each part clicking into place. The more he saw the solution unfold, the more his confidence returned. He stepped up, voice steady, and presented his answer. Principal Whitmore snatched the paper from him, her expression unreadable. She cross-referenced the solution with her notes, then froze. The audience waited. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Finally, the principal's eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out at first. He was right. Jamal had solved it. The shock on Principal Whitmore's face was unmistakable, her confidence crumbling in front of the entire auditorium. The crowd erupted in stunned applause. For the first time all morning, Jamal allowed himself a small smile. The math didn't lie. The applause still echoed in the vast auditorium when Jamal stepped down from the stage, the heat of adrenaline slowly giving way to a cold, prickling awareness. Around him, clusters of students murmured in hushed tones, eyes flitting toward him with a mixture of surprise, admiration, and resentment. A few teachers exchanged glances, some reluctantly clapping, others remaining still. Principal Whitmore stood rigid at the podium, her grip on the microphone tight. Her usual polished composure had cracked, and though she forced a thin smile, it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, it appears young Mr. Carter has exceeded expectations today," she said, voice taut. "Let's thank all of our contestants for their participation." The closing remarks were brief. The event ended faster than anyone expected. Students filed out in a slow stream, buzzing with gossip. Jamal clutched his schoolbag and kept his head up as he walked through the corridors. His heart pounded in his chest, not from fear, but from the strange mix of triumph and uncertainty. He had proven himself in front of everyone. Yet somehow, it felt as though the battle had only just begun. "Hey, genius!" A voice cut through the crowd. Jamal turned to see Ethan Braddock, the son of a board member, star soccer player, an all-around favorite of the faculty, leaning against a locker with a smirk. "Guess you got lucky today," Ethan said, his voice loud enough for others to hear. "That problem? Total fluke." Several other boys snickered behind him. "I solved it," Jamal replied calmly. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Yeah. Don't get too full of yourself. This isn't your place, Carter." Jamal didn't answer. He knew better than to engage. As he turned away, a voice behind him murmured, "Scholarship kid thinks he's a genius now." The words bit, but Jamal kept walking. At lunchtime, Jamal found an empty corner in the library. He pulled out his worn math workbook, the pages filled with penciled notes and problems solved late into the night. This was his world. Here, no sneers or whispers could touch him. But the peace didn't last long. A shadow fell across his table. He looked up to see Mrs. Whitmore, Principal Whitmore's sister and also the school's advanced mathematics teacher, standing over him. A tall, elegant woman with sharp blue eyes, she carried herself with the same haughty demeanor as her sister. "Jamal," she said curtly. "Come with me." Wordlessly, he packed his things and followed her through the silent halls. His steps echoed on the polished floors as they entered an empty classroom. Mrs. Whitmore closed the door. Her gaze bore into him. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked, voice cold. "I answered the question," Jamal replied quietly. "You embarrassed my sister, the principal, in front of the entire school. She leaned closer. There is a certain order here. A way things are done. You would do well to remember that. Jamal's throat tightened, but he met her gaze. I solved the problem. That's all. Mrs. Whitmore's lips thinned. That may be, but if you think this will elevate your status here, you are mistaken. One clever moment does not change who you are, or where you come from. Her words hung heavy in the air. Now, I suggest you focus on your studies, quietly. No more grand displays. She opened the door, dismissing him with a sharp nod. Jamal walked out, pulse racing. The injustice burned in his chest. He hadn't sought attention. He hadn't been boastful. He had simply done what he loved, solved a problem. And now they wanted to silence him. He would not let them. By the time the final bell rang, the entire school buzzed with speculation. Jamal's performance had made waves, and not just among the students. The faculty lounge was abuzz with quiet conversations. That problem was university level. No middle schooler should have solved it. He must have had help. Such whispers found their way to Principal Whitmore's office, where she sat brooding behind her massive mahogany desk. Her pride had been wounded. In front of donors, faculty, and the school board, she had been bested by a 13-year-old black scholarship student. Her fingers drummed the desk. No, this would not stand. Something had to be done. Later that evening, Jamal sat at the small kitchen table in their modest apartment. His mother, Professor Carter, poured him a glass of orange juice and slid a plate of food in front of him. You did well today, she said softly. I'm proud of you. Jamal looked down. They weren't happy. The principal, she looked angry. His mother reached out, her hand warm on his. Of course she was. You showed them something they didn't want to see. But remember, truth speaks louder than their prejudice. You keep being you. Jamal nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. This wasn't over. The next morning, Westbridge Academy buzzed with an energy that was less excitement and more curiosity. The story of the previous day's math challenge had spread like wildfire. Students whispered in hallways, glancing toward Jamal with thinly veiled interest. Even a few teachers watched him more closely during morning classes, their expressions unreadable. In math class, Mrs. Whitmore taught at the front of the room, her tone clipped and formal. Today, she announced, writing on the board, we will review concepts that clearly need further reinforcement. The statement was pointed, her eyes flicking toward Jamal before settling back on the class. Several students smirked, clearly understanding the implication. Throughout the lesson, Mrs. Whitmore deliberately avoided calling on Jamal, even when he raised his hand for the most challenging questions. Other students, many struggling with the material, were praised for even half-correct answers, while Jamal's hand hung in the air, ignored. After class, as Jamal gathered his books, Mrs. Whitmore stopped him with a sharp word. Stay a moment. Jamal stood by her desk as the other students filed out. Mrs. Whitmore pulled out a stack of worksheets and slid them toward him. I expect these to be completed by tomorrow morning. Since you're so advanced, this shouldn't be difficult for you. The stack was thick, far more than what was typically assigned. Jamal understood the message. Busy work meant to consume his time and keep him occupied. Yes, ma'am, he said, voice steady. As he left the room, Jamal caught the sneering glance of Ethan Braddock in the hallway. Watch out, Carter, Ethan muttered. Wouldn't want you getting too big for your britches. By lunchtime, word had spread that Jamal was being put in his place. Some students relished the news, while others remained silent, watching how it would unfold. In the staff lounge, Principal Whitmore paced, her thoughts simmering. That boy made a fool of me in front of the board, she said to her sister. We cannot allow him to disrupt the school's balance. Mrs. Whitmore nodded. He's bright, certainly. But perhaps too bright for his good. We can arrange a test, something more official. The principal's eyes gleamed. Exactly what I was thinking. That afternoon, an announcement rang out over the intercom: "Would Jamal Carter please report to the principal's office?" Jamal packed his books and walked through the quiet corridors, his steps echoing. He knocked on the tall office door. "Enter," came the curt reply. Principal Whitmore sat at her grand desk, flanked by Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Sterling, the school's vice principal. All three regarded Jamal with unreadable expressions. "Mr. Carter," the principal began smoothly, folding her hands. "Given your surprising performance yesterday, we feel it would be prudent to assess your abilities more formally. After all, we must ensure fairness in all academic achievements." She slid a document across the desk, an official-looking letter stamped with the school seal. "You are hereby invited to sit for a special proficiency exam. It will cover advanced mathematics topics appropriate for your grade level, and beyond. It will be administered this Friday." Jamal read the letter, understanding full well what this was: a test designed to trip him up, to prove that his success had been a fluke. "Do you have any objections?" the principal asked, voice silky. Jamal looked up, his jaw set. "No, ma'am," he replied. "I'll take the exam." Principal Whitmore's smile was thin. "Excellent. Dismissed." Word of the upcoming test spread like wildfire. In the cafeteria, in the gym, in the library, students speculated endlessly. "They're going to crush him. No way he passes that. Serves him right." But Jamal remained focused. That evening, at home, he laid out every math book he owned. His mother watched him from the kitchen doorway, concern in her eyes. "They're trying to set you up," she said softly. "I know," Jamal replied. "That's why I need to be ready." His mother crossed the room and hugged him tightly. "No matter what they do, remember, you already proved yourself. You don't need their approval." Jamal nodded, but inside, the fire burned stronger. He wasn't doing this for approval. He was doing it to show the truth. For the next 3 days, Jamal threw himself into preparation. He solved problems late into the night, reviewed complex theories, and even borrowed university textbooks from his mother's college library. At school, the tension thickened. Students whispered when he passed by. Teachers gave him sidelong glances. Even friends seemed hesitant to approach. The day before the test, Ethan cornered him in the locker room. "You think you can beat this?" Ethan sneered. "They wrote that exam to break you. No way you're walking out of that room looking smart." Jamal didn't answer. He simply closed his locker and walked away, head held high. When Friday morning came, the air at Westbridge was electric with anticipation. Students gathered in small groups, speculating on how fast Jamal would fail. The principal's secretary led Jamal to a special testing room, a stark, windowless space with a single desk, a clock on the wall, and 2 faculty observers. Mrs. Whitmore stood at the door. "You may begin," she said, handing him the thick packet of exam papers. Jamal took a deep breath, opened the first page, and began. The first page of the exam was deceptively simple. Basic algebra, simple functions, a warm-up, no doubt. Jamal worked through them quickly, double-checking each answer. The room was silent except for the soft ticking of the clock on the wall and the occasional rustle of papers from the 2 observing faculty members. By the second page, the questions grew harder: advanced trigonometry, calculus problems that many high school students would struggle with. Jamal paused briefly to breathe, then pressed on. His pencil flew across the page, calculations sharp and deliberate. Mrs. Whitmore, sitting at a desk in the corner, watched him like a hawk. The faintest smirk tugged at her lips. The exam had been meticulously designed to overwhelm. Complex integrals, abstract algebra, and number theory, topics Jamal had never been formally taught. But what they didn't understand was how Jamal's mind worked. His love of numbers wasn't bound by curriculum. At night, when the apartment was quiet and his mother graded papers, He would devour online lectures, study math forums, and challenge himself with problems far beyond his age level. Still, even for him, the exam was brutal. By the third section, Jamal's hand began to cramp. The clock ticked mercilessly on. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He glanced briefly at the observers, no sympathy there, only thinly veiled anticipation of his failure. He shook out his hand, took a sip of water, and refocused. One problem at a time. At the halfway mark, Principal Whitmore herself entered the room. She stood at the back, arms folded, her sharp gaze fixed on Jamal. "Just observing," she said smoothly to the proctors. Her presence added to the weight pressing on Jamal's shoulders, but he refused to let it distract him. His pencil moved steadily, his mind in a focused rhythm. Then came the final section, a single, massive problem that spanned an entire page. A multi-layered, abstract problem designed to trip him up completely. It involved modular arithmetic, matrix theory, and a proof. Jamal stared at it, heart pounding. For a long moment, the numbers and symbols blurred. He closed his eyes, blocking out the pressure, the stares, the ticking clock. He visualized the problem, broke it down in his mind piece by piece, the way he always did when solving the hardest challenges. Slowly, the path revealed itself. His pencil began to move again, carefully, deliberately, line by line. Each piece of the proof built on the last, the logic flowing smoothly now. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. Finally, as the last minute ticked away, Jamal wrote the final line of his solution. "Time's up," Mrs. Whitmore announced crisply. Jamal set down his pencil, hands trembling slightly from fatigue. The exam packet was collected in silence. The principal offered no words of acknowledgement, only a cold nod. "You will be notified of your results," Mrs. Whitmore said curtly. "You may go." As Jamal left the room, his legs felt heavy. In the hallway, students had gathered, clearly waiting to see him walk out. The whispers started immediately. "Did he finish? Look at him, he looks wiped. No way he passed." Ethan leaned against a locker, smirking. "Looks like the genius isn't so confident now." Jamal ignored him, pushing through the crowd. He needed air, space to think. That evening at home, he slumped at the kitchen table. His mother sat across from him, concern in her eyes. "They gave me the hardest test I've ever seen," Jamal admitted quietly. "They want me to fail." His mother reached across and squeezed his hand. "No matter what happens, you already won, Jamal. You showed them what you can do. No piece of paper changes that." Jamal nodded, though deep down, frustration and uncertainty churned. He had given everything he had to that test. Was it enough? The weekend passed slowly. Rumors swirled at school. Some said he had cracked under pressure. Others said he'd left questions blank. On Monday morning, the tension was palpable. Students and teachers watched him more closely than ever. Shortly before lunch, an announcement came over the intercom. "Jamal Carter, please report to the principal's office." Another wave of whispers followed him down the hall. He knocked on the tall wooden door once again. "Come in," Principal Whitmore called. She sat at her desk, the exam packet open in front of her. Beside her stood Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Sterling. The atmosphere was thick with expectation. Jamal stood tall. Principal Whitmore looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "We have reviewed your test," she said slowly. "It was challenging, as expected." She tapped the papers lightly. "And yet, you achieved the highest proficiency score we have ever recorded for a student at your level. You correctly solved every single problem, including the advanced proof." For a moment, the room was silent. Principal Whitmore's jaw tightened. Her carefully controlled expression faltered, the faintest trace of disbelief flashing across her face. "You passed," she admitted reluctantly. "With distinction." Jamal met her gaze, unblinking. "Thank you," he said simply. She waved a dismissive hand. You may go. As Jamal turned to leave, he heard Mrs. Whitmore hiss under her breath, impossible. Outside the office, word spread quickly. He passed. Are you serious? No way. Jamal walked the hall, shoulders squared. He knew this wasn't the end, there would be more tests, more obstacles. But for now, he had faced their challenge and won. And they knew it. In the days that followed, the atmosphere at Westbridge Academy shifted. Where once students had barely noticed Jamal, now their eyes followed him down the halls. Some were wide with curiosity, others narrowed with resentment. A few nodded respectfully. But the whispers were everywhere. He passed the test. All of it. Even the proof. Yeah. They said he scored higher than anyone in school history. Not all were pleased. Ethan and his clique were especially vocal. He's making us all look bad, Ethan sneered in gym class. What's he trying to prove? But Jamal said nothing. He focused on his classes, his books, and the numbers that always made sense. He knew that Principal Whitmore wouldn't let this go. There would be more, she wasn't done with him yet. He was right. What Jamal didn't know was that behind the scenes, Principal Whitmore was furious. In her office, she paced, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. He made us look like fools, she said to Mrs. Whitmore and Vice Principal Sterling. First, at the math challenge, then the exam. The board is talking. Mrs. Whitmore's expression was tight. If this continues, donors may start asking questions. The Braddocks are already concerned. The principal nodded. Exactly why I've called for a special board meeting. If we can't discredit his academic standing, we'll question his place here. She flipped open a folder. There are strict rules about scholarship conduct. I'm sure we can find something. That week, letters went out to the school board members, many of them wealthy alumni with deep ties to the school's old traditions. A meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon. The topic, reviewing the academic and behavioral conduct of scholarship students. Word trickled out. By Thursday, the whispers started again. They're trying to get rid of him. Is that even allowed? Depends on what the board decides. Jamal heard the talk but stayed quiet. His mother, however, learned the truth from a colleague at the college. They're holding a board meeting to review your scholarship, she told him that night. They might try to pull it. Jamal's stomach clenched. Because I passed the test. Because you embarrassed them, she said softly. But no matter what they do, you belong here. You've earned it. Jamal nodded, resolve hardening. Friday came. The school buzzed with tension. Students noticed the line of luxury cars in the parking lot. In the main hall, board members arrived, old men in tailored suits, women in pearl necklaces, all exuding an air of privilege. Jamal sat in the library, trying to focus on his work. But when an office assistant appeared at the door and called his name, his pulse quickened. You're requested at the board meeting, the assistant said quietly. Jamal stood. As he walked through the silent halls, students peeked from classrooms, watching. Outside the boardroom, his mother waited. She stood tall, dressed professionally, eyes fierce with determination. I'm going in with you, she said. Together, they entered the boardroom. A long polished table stretched across the room. At its head sat Principal Whitmore, flanked by Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Sterling. Around the table were a dozen board members, including Mr. Braddock, Ethan's father. Ah, Mr. Carter, Principal Whitmore said smoothly. And Professor Carter. Please, sit. Jamal and his mother took seats near the end of the table. This meeting, the principal began, has been called to address certain concerns regarding the scholarship program. Specifically, the conduct and suitability of students placed under this program. Mr. Braddock spoke next, his voice oily. We've received reports that some scholarship students may be disrupting the established culture of Westbridge. We must consider what is best for the school's environment. Jamal sat still, heart pounding, as they spoke about him without naming him directly. Academic excellence is one thing, Principal Whitmore said pointedly. But cultural fit is equally important. Finally, Professor Carter rose. With all due respect, she said firmly, my son has done nothing but excel academically and conduct himself with integrity. The only disruption is that he has surpassed expectations some of you didn't want him to meet. A murmur rippled through the room. Jamal stood too. If I've caused any disruption, he said quietly but clearly, it was by solving the problems given to me. That's what I came here to do. The room grew tense. Several board members exchanged glances. Finally, one of the older members, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, spoke. I've reviewed the test results myself, she said. The boy is brilliant. You should be proud to have him represent the academy. More murmurs followed. Principal Whitmore's expression darkened, but the tide in the room was shifting. Mr. Braddock scowled. Still, this attention is disruptive. Another board member cut in. The solution is not to punish excellence. It is to raise our standards. After a tense pause, the silver-haired woman spoke again. Unless there is a violation of conduct, and none has been presented, this meeting is over. And with that, the board began to rise. Principal Whitmore's face was stone. Her plan had failed. As Jamal and his mother exited the boardroom, a sense of triumph surged in his chest. They had tried to bring him down, and once again, he had stood his ground. But he knew this wasn't the end. There would be more to come. Though the board meeting had ended in Jamal's favor, the undercurrent of tension at Westbridge Academy remained. Word of what happened spread quickly among the students and faculty alike. He shut them down again. The board backed him. They still won't leave him alone. For Jamal, the days that followed were a strange mix of quiet victories and simmering hostility. Some students approached him with cautious respect. Hey, that was impressive, one of the older math club members said, giving him a nod. But others, like Ethan and his circle, grew even more bitter. They'll find another way to take him down, Ethan muttered in the locker room. Just wait. Jamal ignored the stares, the whispers, and the forced smiles from teachers who had once barely acknowledged him. He kept his head down, focusing on his work. He had no time for distractions. The year-end academic showcase was approaching. Every year, the showcase was the highlight of Westbridge's academic calendar. Students presented projects in math, science, literature, and the arts to an audience of parents, alumni, and, most importantly, potential donors. For scholarship students, it was a high-stakes opportunity. Excellence here could secure funding, recommendations, and future opportunities. Principal Whitmore, still smarting from her failed attempt to discredit Jamal, saw the event as her next battlefield. In a closed-door meeting with her sister and Vice Principal Sterling, she laid out a new plan. The showcase is public, she said, voice low. If he falters there, in front of the entire donor community, the damage will be lasting. Mrs. Whitmore nodded. We'll ensure the expectations for his project are exceptionally high. That week, Jamal received an official notice from the academic committee. Given your recent performance, we invite you to present a project at this year's showcase in the category of applied mathematics. As a special participant, you will be required to develop a project that demonstrates advanced, real-world application of mathematical theory. The tone was clear, this wasn't an invitation. It was a test. When Jamal brought the letter home, his mother frowned. They're pushing you again, she said. Jamal read the letter again, thoughtfully. I can do this, he said quietly. For the next 2 weeks, Jamal immersed himself in research. He pored over engineering texts, mathematical journals, and computer science resources. He wanted to create something undeniable, a project that wouldn't just impress, but silence any remaining doubts. Finally, inspiration struck. He decided to develop a predictive algorithm capable of analyzing and forecasting local traffic patterns based on real-time data, something both complex and practical. Late nights blurred into early mornings. Jamal coded, calculated, and tested his model again and again, tweaking every line of code, refining every equation. At school, Ethan and his friends watched with thinly veiled amusement. "Bet he crashes and burns at the showcase," Ethan smirked. Mrs. Whitmore observed Jamal in class with cold eyes, no longer ignoring him but scrutinizing his every move. Finally, the day of the showcase arrived. The academy gleamed, and banners hung in the halls. Parents in designer clothes mingled with faculty and board members. Donors toured the exhibits, their conversations a hum of polite interest. In the grand hall, booths were arranged by category. Students bustled about, setting up their displays. Jamal arrived early, carrying his carefully prepared materials, his algorithm, a laptop running the predictive model, and charts demonstrating its accuracy. As he set up, Principal Whitmore walked past, pausing briefly. "High expectations today, Mr. Carter," she said smoothly. "Do hope you're prepared." Jamal met her gaze. "I am." Throughout the morning, judges and guests circulated. Many booths drew polite interest, but Jamal's project soon attracted a small crowd. The demonstration was elegant, using live data feeds from the city's traffic reports. His algorithm updated predictions in real time, showing how traffic flow would shift over the next several hours. A local university professor leaned in, impressed. "This is advanced work. How old are you?" 13, Jamal replied simply. More onlookers gathered. Even members of the board stopped to watch. Across the room, Principal Whitmore's expression grew tighter. At midday, the official panel of judges arrived, including visiting university professors, alumni experts, and donors. They spent over an hour at Jamal's booth, questioning him thoroughly. He answered each query calmly, explaining the mathematical theory behind the model, the algorithms, and the data structures. One professor from MIT looked genuinely stunned. "This is the kind of project we see from undergraduates." Jamal simply nodded. After the judging ended, the academy prepared for the award ceremony. The crowd gathered in the auditorium, anticipation crackling in the air. Principal Whitmore stood at the podium, her smile brittle. "This year's showcase has displayed many excellent projects," she began. "We are proud of all our students." She began to announce the winners by category. When she reached applied mathematics, a slight pause betrayed her discomfort. "The award for applied mathematics," she said, voice tight, "goes to Jamal Carter." A wave of applause rippled through the room, genuine this time, with none of the forced politeness from before. Jamal rose and walked to the stage. As he accepted the certificate, he glanced at Principal Whitmore. For just a moment, he saw it, the flicker of shock and grudging recognition in her eyes. As he left the stage, the applause followed him. This wasn't just a win. It was a message. And the entire academy had heard it. The week after the showcase, Westbridge Academy hummed with renewed energy. For the first time since Jamal had started at the school, the conversations swirling around him weren't all whispered doubts or thinly veiled contempt. He won. "Did you see that project? That professor from MIT asked for his mom's contact info. Said they wanted to talk more." It wasn't admiration from everyone, but the tone was changing. Some students from the older grades, even ones Jamal had never spoken to, began to acknowledge him with nods in the hallway. A few quietly approached him in the library, asking about his algorithm or the coding he'd used. Yet with every new ripple of recognition came another wave of resentment from those who refused to accept it. Chief among them was Ethan. "He's not that smart," Ethan snapped to anyone who'd listen. "He probably had help. Bet his mom did it for him." The bitterness was palpable. And soon, Ethan's words began to evolve from simple complaints into a more dangerous form, a rumor. It started in small corners, a whispered accusation passed from one locker room to another, repeated just loud enough for the right ears to hear. Did you hear? Jamal cheated on his project. Yeah, I heard his mom wrote the code. I heard they paid someone to help. Before long, the whispers gained momentum. By Wednesday morning, even some teachers had caught wind of it. Jamal noticed the difference immediately, the narrowed eyes, the curt tone from faculty members who had recently begun to respect him. In the afternoon, he was called once again to Principal Whitmore's office. He entered the room with a sinking feeling. The principal sat at her desk, her expression cool. Beside her stood Mrs. Whitmore, and across the room, Vice Principal Sterling watched with his usual distant gaze. Mr. Carter, the principal began, it seems there have been troubling reports concerning your recent project. Jamal's pulse quickened. He said nothing, waiting. Allegations have surfaced suggesting that your work was not entirely your own, she continued smoothly. Naturally, such claims must be investigated. She pushed a document across the desk, an official notice of academic review. You are hereby required to submit all source materials, drafts, and correspondence related to your project. Additionally, a faculty committee will conduct interviews to ensure the integrity of your submission. Jamal's jaw tightened. This is because I won, he said quietly. Principal Whitmore arched a brow. This is because the integrity of our academic programs must be upheld. He met her gaze, unflinching. I did the project myself. No one helped me. Mrs. Whitmore's smile was thin. We shall see. The next day was a whirlwind of scrutiny. Jamal was pulled from his classes to meet with the review committee, 3 faculty members who questioned him at length. How did you develop the algorithm? What external resources did you use? Did anyone assist with coding? For hours, Jamal answered every question, supplying his notebooks, his code drafts, even his online research logs. He knew the material inside and out. He explained his process clearly, detailing the development of each part of the project. But he could feel the weight of doubt in the room, a doubt that had nothing to do with his answers. Meanwhile, the rumors outside the committee room continued to grow. He's finished. They're gonna pull his scholarship. I knew he couldn't have done it alone. Even former allies began to distance themselves. The math club president, who had congratulated Jamal after the showcase, now barely nodded in the halls. Teachers who had recently shown curiosity now avoided eye contact. Only a few remained steadfast. One was Mr. Evans, a soft-spoken computer science teacher who had quietly followed Jamal's progress. They're scared of you, Mr. Evans said quietly after class. That's all this is. But facts matter. Keep your head. Jamal nodded, though the strain was wearing on him. At home that night, his mother sat with him at the kitchen table. They can't ignore the truth forever, she said. But they want to, Jamal replied. They're trying everything to tear me down. She squeezed his hand. You've come this far. You will get through this, too. The following morning, the review committee called him in for one final session. He stood before them, exhausted but determined. Principal Whitmore entered the room near the end, her expression still unreadable. Mr. Carter, she said, the committee will deliberate and issue its findings tomorrow. That night was the longest of Jamal's life. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, running every moment through his mind. Had he missed something? Was there any angle they could twist against him? Finally, dawn came. By the time he arrived at school, the halls were alive with tension. Everyone knew the decision was coming. Mid-morning, an announcement echoed through the building. Mr. Carter, please report to the assembly hall. The entire school gathered there, students, faculty, and board members. The air buzzed with curiosity and expectation. At the front of the room, Principal Whitmore stood at the podium. After a thorough review by the academic committee, she announced, it has been determined that Mr. Carter's project was his own original work. A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. In light of this, she continued, her tone forced, we will recognize his achievement as earned and legitimate. Jamal stood in the back of the room, head high, heart pounding. He had survived again. But as Principal Whitmore's cold gaze swept the audience, he knew, they were not finished. Not yet. In the days following the committee's decision, a strange stillness settled over Westbridge Academy. The rumors died down, whispers faded, and for the first time in weeks, the tension around Jamal seemed to ease. But Jamal knew better. The silence wasn't peace, it was a pause, a waiting game. The principal and her allies wouldn't simply give up. Still, there were victories. Several teachers who had previously been cold now treated him with a new, if cautious, respect. Mr. Evans, the computer science teacher, even pulled him aside after class. You showed a lot of grace under pressure, he said. Most adults couldn't handle what they threw at you. Thank you, Jamal replied. One afternoon, as Jamal sat in the library reviewing material for an upcoming math competition, the school secretary approached him. Mr. Carter, she said softly. You're requested in the principal's office. Another summons. Jamal gathered his books and made the now familiar walk to the imposing office. When he entered, he was surprised to find not just Principal Whitmore and Vice Principal Sterling, but also two unfamiliar visitors, a distinguished older man with silver hair and a younger woman in a professional suit. Mr. Carter, the principal said smoothly, this is Dr. Edmund Crane from the State Academic Council, and Ms. Renee Allen from the Governor's STEM Initiative. Jamal's eyes widened slightly. He recognized the names, both were influential figures in state education policy. We've been following your progress, Dr. Crane said, his tone far warmer than Jamal expected. Your performance at the showcase drew our attention. Ms. Allen smiled. We're organizing a statewide STEM invitational for exceptional students across all districts, public, private, and charter. It's rare to invite someone so young, but your work more than qualifies you. Principal Whitmore's smile was tight. Naturally, we support our students pursuing such opportunities. Jamal nodded. Thank you. I'd be honored. After the visitors left, Principal Whitmore turned to him. This invitational is a serious undertaking, she said coolly. It will require you to compete at a much higher level. If you fail, the consequences for your reputation, and your scholarship, will be significant. Jamal met her gaze. I won't fail. Word of the invitation spread quickly. For the first time, even the skeptics had to admit, Jamal's success was no fluke. But not everyone was pleased. At lunch, Ethan slammed his tray down at his table. This is getting out of control, he growled to his friends. We can't let him win again. What are you gonna do? One asked. Ethan's eyes gleamed. There's always a way. Meanwhile, Jamal threw himself into preparation. The STEM Invitational would test not only math, but interdisciplinary knowledge, physics, coding, and engineering. He spent hours after school researching, running simulations, and refining his skills. At home, his mother supported him every step of the way. You're making them face what they didn't want to see, she said. But remember, you're doing this for you, not them. Jamal nodded. He knew that now. Every challenge they threw at him only made him stronger. The week before the invitational, Jamal received the official schedule and competition materials. As he reviewed the packet, something caught his eye, a note indicating that competitors could submit one pre-developed model to demonstrate at the event. Immediately, Jamal thought of his traffic algorithm, now improved with weeks of additional data and refinements. He spent long nights perfecting the code, tweaking the interface, and preparing a full demonstration. But trouble was brewing. Unbeknownst to Jamal, Ethan had overheard his plans and hatched a new scheme. With the help of a friend whose father worked in IT, Ethan sought a way to discredit Jamal's model, a quiet attack that could ruin his presentation. Just a little adjustment, Ethan whispered. No one will know. The night before the invitational, as Jamal finalized his project, an unexpected email arrived, a false warning claiming a critical update was required for his algorithm software. Tired and focused, Jamal nearly clicked the link, but something made him pause. He checked the sender's address. It wasn't official. His stomach dropped. He realized someone was trying to sabotage him. Quickly, he scrubbed his system, verified every file, and restored a clean backup of his code. By the time he finally slept, it was well past midnight. The next morning, he woke with clear resolve. At the invitational venue, a sprawling university conference center, students from across the state gathered. The atmosphere buzzed with energy and competition. When Jamal arrived with his mother, he noticed a few familiar faces from the boardroom and the showcase. Even some of Westbridge's board members had come to watch. Principal Whitmore stood near the entrance, flanked by Mrs. Whitmore and Mr. Sterling. "Good luck today, Mr. Carter," the principal said, her tone cool. "You'll need it." Jamal simply nodded. He moved to his assigned station, set up his equipment, and began preparing for the competition. Across the room, Ethan watched from the visitors section, eyes narrowed. "You won't win this time," he muttered. But Jamal was ready. This was more than just another test. This was his moment to prove, once and for all, that no one could silence the truth. The conference hall buzzed with activity as students adjusted laptops, calibrated equipment, and reviewed their notes. The STEM Invitational wasn't just another school event, it was the biggest academic competition in the state. University professors, tech industry professionals, and state education officials mingled with parents and school administrators. Winning here could open doors far beyond Westbridge Academy. Jamal set up his station methodically. His traffic prediction model, polished and refined over countless late nights, was ready. Every line of code had been double-checked. The sabotage attempt hadn't rattled him, it had only strengthened his resolve. He glanced around the hall. Some students came from elite prep schools with entire teams supporting them. Jamal stood alone, but that didn't bother him. He had earned his place. At the far end of the room, Principal Whitmore arrived, accompanied by Mrs. Whitmore and several board members, including Mr. Braddock, Ethan's father. Their eyes landed on Jamal. The principal's smile was faint, brittle. Nearby, Ethan loitered among the spectators, watching intently. His plan to sabotage Jamal's project had failed, but he wasn't finished. He had one last card to play. As the competition began, Jamal focused on the tasks at hand. The first rounds tested general STEM knowledge, rapid-fire quizzes and problem-solving challenges. Jamal moved through them with calm precision, answering confidently while others stumbled. Next came the project demonstrations. One by one, students presented their models to panels of judges. Many projects were impressive: robotics, environmental tech, and advanced coding. But as Jamal waited for his turn, he noticed the subtle glances, the whispered exchanges among certain judges. The Whitmore's influence was here too. Finally, it was Jamal's moment. He stood tall as his name was called. Next, representing Westbridge Academy, Jamal Carter. A ripple of interest swept through the crowd. More than a few had heard of the scholarship student who'd shaken up Westbridge. Jamal stepped forward, connected his laptop, and began his presentation. "This is a real-time traffic prediction model," he explained, voice steady. "It uses current traffic data, weather conditions, and historical patterns to forecast congestion up to 3 hours in advance." As the model ran live, displaying shifting traffic maps and predictive graphs, the judges leaned in, intrigued. "How did you train the model?" one professor asked. "I used a weighted regression algorithm," Jamal replied, "combined with recursive neural networks to handle variable time sequences." Another judge nodded appreciatively. "That's graduate-level work." Across the room, Principal Whitmore's jaw tightened. Mr. Braddock frowned. The demonstration continued, and Jamal handled every question with ease. The audience watched, many impressed. But then, during the final minutes of his presentation, Ethan made his move. Quietly slipping near the judges, he spoke to one in a low voice. "I heard, he didn't build the code himself. His mom's a professor, rumor is she wrote most of it." The judge stiffened slightly. The words spread quickly between them. Jamal noticed the shift in their expressions, subtle, but clear. The questions grew colder, more suspicious. "Can you verify that you wrote every line of this code?" one judge asked sharply. Jamal's heart pounded. He knew where this was coming from. "Yes," he said firmly. "Every part of it. I have all the drafts and version history." But the doubt had been seeded. After the demonstration, as Jamal packed up, Principal Whitmore approached with a faint smile. "A strong showing, though of course, these judges are very thorough." Jamal said nothing. He could see the satisfaction in her eyes. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Jamal performed well in every event, but he knew the whispers were growing again. By late afternoon, the entire room gathered for the final award ceremony. The crowd was thick with parents, donors, and school officials. The air buzzed with anticipation. The host stepped to the podium. "This year's STEM Invitational has been one of the most competitive yet," he began. "We've seen exceptional talent from across the state." The awards were announced, category by category. Jamal held his breath as they reached the final award, Overall Excellence in Applied STEM. "And the winner is..." A long pause. "Jamal Carter of Westbridge Academy." For a beat, the room was stunned into silence. Then, slowly, the applause began, hesitant at first, then growing louder. Jamal stood, heart racing, and walked to the stage. Cameras flashed. He accepted the plaque and certificate, meeting the host's congratulatory handshake with a steady grip. In the audience, Principal Whitmore's face was a mask of disbelief. Ethan looked stricken. Jamal's mother beamed, pride shining in her eyes. As Jamal stepped off the stage, several university representatives approached. "We'd like to talk more," one said. "Have you considered early enrollment programs?" Jamal could hardly believe it. After everything, the tests, the sabotage, the rumors, he had won. Not just the award, but the truth. But the day wasn't over. As the crowd dispersed, Jamal overheard a heated conversation near the side of the hall. Principal Whitmore, Mr. Braddock, and a few board members were arguing about him. "This can't continue," Mr. Braddock snapped. "He's making a spectacle. He's threatening our position," another said. "The donors," Principal Whitmore cut them off. "Enough. We'll deal with this, once and for all." Jamal's pulse quickened. He had won this battle, but a larger one was coming. They would not stop until they drove him out. But he wasn't going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. The Monday after the invitational, Westbridge Academy was more divided than ever. Some students approached Jamal with genuine congratulations. A few teachers gave quiet nods of respect. But from others, especially the old guard, the coldness had deepened. Ethan had retreated into sullen silence, his father furious at the public defeat. Principal Whitmore, humiliated again, retreated into strategy. By midweek, the whispers returned, but this time, they came with paperwork. On Thursday morning, Jamal was called yet again to the principal's office. This time, his mother was already there, seated with a stern expression. On the desk between them sat a thin file stamped disciplinary review. Principal Whitmore's voice was calm, controlled. "Mr. Carter, after careful consideration, the administration has determined that your recent behavior, while academically impressive, has created a disruptive atmosphere." She tapped the file lightly. "In addition, certain irregularities in your scholarship file have come to light." Jamal's stomach clenched. His mother's voice was cold and clear. "This is nonsense, and you know it." The principal smiled faintly. "We are simply following protocol." Then she slid an official letter across the desk, pending review by the Board of Trustees, the administration recommends revocation of Mr. Carter's scholarship on grounds of conduct inconsistent with school values. Jamal's heart pounded. They were trying to expel him, not for cheating, not for academics, but under the vague cloak of conduct. "This is retaliation," Professor Carter said sharply. "And you will not get away with it." But Principal Whitmore's smile didn't waver. "The board meets tomorrow," she said. "You are, of course, welcome to make a statement." Jamal and his mother left in silence, but as soon as they reached the car, she turned to him. "This is it, Jamal. They're trying to end this, once and for all." He nodded. "Then we'll fight." That night, they prepared. They gathered every award, every test result, every commendation Jamal had earned, hard evidence of his achievements. They compiled records of the attempted sabotage at the Invitational, statements from supportive teachers like Mr. Evans, and testimony from the state officials who had invited Jamal in the first place. When Friday came, Jamal dressed carefully, in his best shirt and tie. His mother's hand was steady on his shoulder. "You've already shown them what you can do," she said softly. "Now show them who you are." At the Board of Trustees meeting, the room was packed. The full board was present, along with several faculty members, parents, and curious onlookers. Word had spread, this was more than a scholarship review. It was a battle for the school's soul. Principal Whitmore stood at the head of the table, her tone cool and formal. "We are here to discuss the matter of Mr. Carter's scholarship status," she began. "In light of recent disruptions, we must consider whether his presence aligns with the values of Westbridge Academy." Murmurs rippled through the room. Then Jamal's mother rose, documents in hand. "What we are here to consider," she said clearly, "is whether this school values achievement or prejudice." She laid out the timeline, Jamal's victories, the repeated attempts to discredit him, the baseless rumors, the sabotage. She held up the letter from the State Education Council praising Jamal's work, then presented a statement from one of the invitational judges. "In my professional opinion, Mr. Carter's work exceeds the level of most university students." Finally, Jamal stood. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the room. "I came here to learn," he said simply. "I did everything they asked, and more. I solved their problems. I passed their tests. I won their competitions. And every time, they tried to find a way to tear it down." He looked around the room. "But numbers don't lie. The truth doesn't lie. You can try to take my scholarship. You can try to erase what I've done. But it won't change the facts." For a moment, the room was silent. Then the silver-haired board member, the same one who had defended Jamal at the first meeting, rose. "I've heard enough," she said. "What this young man has done should be celebrated, not punished." Several other board members nodded. Even a few faculty members murmured in agreement. Mr. Braddock tried to object, but the tide had turned. A vote was called. When it was over, the result was clear: the board rejects the administration's recommendation. Mr. Carter's scholarship is renewed in full. Furthermore, we will be conducting a review of the administration's conduct in this matter. A stunned silence followed. Principal Whitmore's face was pale. Mrs. Whitmore sat rigid, her lips pressed in a thin line. But Jamal stood tall. He had faced them all, the principal, the teachers, the board, and he had won. As he left the room, students and teachers in the hall watched. Some clapped quietly. Others simply stared, wide-eyed. Mr. Evans approached and shook his hand. "Well done," he said simply. Outside, in the bright afternoon sun, Jamal and his mother walked to their car. For the first time in months, there was no knot of tension in his chest. "You did it," his mother said, voice thick with pride. Jamal smiled. "We did." And though he knew there would always be more battles ahead, one thing was clear: they would never silence him again. Dear friend, no child should ever be judged by their background or the color of their skin. Talent, hard work, and integrity deserve respect, no matter where they come from. If this story inspired you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let's stand together for fairness, equality, and the right for every young mind to shine.